This episode of Two Guys on Mobile is brought to you by Pontiflex App Leads. Go to www.appleads.com. It's time for Two Guys on Mobile. This is episode number 19, and we're recording this on Friday, June 17th, 2011. And I can't get used to that title. Because then if you just kind of translate it, it means that guy number one on mobile, I'm on mobile. Rob Woodbridge on mobile. Guy number two, Jeff, you're on mobile too. Mr. Jeff Bacon. You can find me at robwoodbridge.com or on tether.tv. You can find Jeff at the Suave Hog on Twitter or bacononthego.com. He's also all things mobile at Ascension Cross Media, which used to be Bitheads and a bunch of other companies as well. Welcome, Jeff. Episode number 19. What does that make us? Legal in Ontario.
Weren't we legal at 18? Oh, no, just drinking it's Ontario. Drinking is 19, isn't it?
Yes, you can vote, but you can't drink, which is probably smart. But now we can drink and vote, which is even smarter. That's how the Green Party gets elected. Oh!
I thought that was how the Conservatives got elected.
Yeah, well, exactly. This is episode number 19, and we're coming to you on Friday because obviously there's some massive breaking news we're going to be talking about this time around, which is RIM and their results and the impact that RIM's going to have, or the results are going to have on RIM and what we think. We're going to give you a rundown about that. We're also going to talk about a little bit about app discovery and some stuff that Yahoo's doing that we're going to dive into it. And the third thing that we're going to be talking about is this whole question about multi-platform development, which should be a good discussion. Do you do it? When do you do it? Why do you do it? And we're going to dive into that. Clearly, this is the number one podcast, video and audio, that you come to hear, to listen to two talking voices or watch two talking heads talk about mobile and what is going on in the mobile industry. Not about the news. You can get that anywhere. That is a commodity. What we're going to do is take a little bit of deeper approach, dive in and look at the insight. Give you a little bit of insight about what the news really means. And obviously our first story today is the great Canadian company. I think it's Canada's largest technology company in the entire nation. We have lots of technology up here, posting their Q1 results. Dun, dun, dun. And it didn't go over very well, I gather. Hey?
There was a few concerns about the message that they were providing yesterday.
Well, a little bit of a recap, just in the numbers wise, because we'll get that over with, and that's news, and that's a commodity, but we're going to be talking about it from a different context. Q1 revenue was $4.9 billion. They were off by $250 million. That's $250 million. In context, it doesn't seem like a lot, but in isolation, it seems like a lot compared to my bank account. Just a little bit difference. Earnings per share was $1.33 versus the expected $1.32. Yay! Shipments of the devices was a staggering 13.2 million versus 13.5 expected, but 13.2 is still a large number of devices shipped. And we won't even get into the projections, because the projections for Q2 are down by about $1 billion and a bit in revenue, down earning per share by about, cut in half almost. And they didn't even give a shipment number, which is probably a smart thing at this point. Maybe, we'll see. So initial thoughts about this? You sat in on the crackberry.com rundown as this was happening, Jeff. I mean, I don't think that this was a surprise.
No, I mean, I don't think anybody. I mean, even if you look at what the analysts were projecting, they were projecting lower than RIM had really guided on before. But I think that everybody was kind of recognizing that RIM is going through a transition, and RIM has been having some struggles over the last little while. It's no secret, and that this is a reflection of finally a financial reflection of that reality. And I think that my first reaction when I heard it was, that sucks. Because I know a lot of people at RIM, and I have friends of mine at RIM, so I don't like it when RIM has trouble, because that can spell issues for them as a company, as friends and employees there. But on the bigger picture, I think that it's you mentioned earlier before we started that it was basically the first down quarter in 6 years.
6 years, yeah.
And I think that's. I mean, you look at that, and you look at a tech boom, and you look at where a company is always on the upswing. and you have to look at what the factors of that are. For some companies, it's internally generated, and for some companies, it's externally generated. And RIM has been in the smartphone market since basically there was no smartphone market. They helped create the market for it, and so the smartphone market has grown, quarter over quarter, every quarter for 6, 7 years as well. So I think that we have to look at RIM in context of the smartphone market as a whole. I mean, the only smartphone manufacturer that's ever had any trouble in the last 5 years is Motorola. For some reason, Motorola can't seem to figure out how to produce phones, but everybody else producing phones sells more phones quarter over quarter every quarter because there's more phones sold worldwide. There's not a lot of major phone manufacturers that show downturns in quarters over the last few years. So, I think RIM's some of the intrinsic issues that have been hindering RIM have been hidden by the fact that the market as a whole has been growing so fast, it's pulled it along with it.
So, I mean, we're going to get into the issues that you see, and we've each got our opinion, and I think that they're fairly in line. I think there's probably some corner cases for both of us. But one of the things that it just strikes me is that this is a symptom, right? So these are just this has been festering for quite some time. I think pretty much since the iPhone. Maybe the iPhone 3 came out. I don't know if the first generation iPhone had a real impact on it, but the 3GS I think was really that first, because it had the VPN capabilities and it started to really get noticed a little bit more in the enterprise and by RIM. But this is an outward symptom. Like, this is not new. They've been sitting on this information. They knew that this was going to be a crappy quarter. They knew their numbers. So what we're really seeing is kind of like the rash, right? This is kind of like the rash that's popping out now as a result of some kind of other illness inside of the organization. But they did announce for the first time that they are going to be doing layoffs. What they said, I think they said adjusted.
They said they were going to restructure.
Yeah.
They tried to avoid the term layoffs, but I mean, to the point of layoffs, that's one where it got picked up a little bit, and I think it got lost in the numbers thing, which I think is a good thing for RIM, because the reality is they didn't really explain very well why they were laying people off. But if you look at the direction of RIM's history and future, it's obvious why they're going to be people that they don't need anymore. They've been a Java platform shop for the last 5-7 years, and they're moving to not a Java platform anymore. So your 2,000-3,000 Java developers and experts you have in-house are no longer the people you need. You need C experts and QNX experts in-house. So I think that, yes, they're doing a work reduction, but they've been staffing up so much for the second platform, the new platform, and they haven't ramped down the engineering resources on the old platform. So it makes sense if they ramp down engineering resources on a platform that they're eventually going to be deprecating.
Isn't that funny, though? Because, it's an evolution. And, when a company like RIM, which basically invented email on the hip, like whether they did or not, but they certainly did popularize it, and two-way paging, and then email on the hip, and always on email, and that was, and I'll be blunt, that was their last innovation, right? I mean, it was a huge one. It shaped an industry, but everything else has been an evolution from that, from securing it, the business model that they've chosen. But it was a big one. And when you're a company that is basically inventing an industry, we saw it with Microsoft. We've seen it with every major technology company, including IBM, right? You go through these up cycles, which is what happened. And then at some point, the inertia, the momentum that got you there can't propel you anymore. And you've got to adjust yourself for that down cycle. This is the first one that RIM has faced in this modern era of RIM as a two-way pager and an email client and a smartphone. And it's expected. Like, you'd have to be ridiculous to think that this company could actually continue on on a high without a bump. And this is really where the test of the company comes down, which is exactly now when we're facing a little adversity and how they handle it. They're handling it, and their CEOs are handling it, I would, in my opinion, improperly. Because they sat in that conference call yesterday, their earnings call, and said, look, dude, you don't understand us, right? That's all they've said this whole time. Why can't we get a break? You don't understand us. You don't get us. Well, you know what? Hey, Jim, Mike, help us understand you. Because what's going on right now is, you're setting yourself up for a fall. Just open it up and let us have that conversation about what's going on.
So RIM, you're right in there, Robin, that RIM does have a communications problem, and they are dealing with many things they haven't dealt with before. But I think to say that this is the first time they faced adversity, I think is really hiding the fact that it's the first time they've publicly faced adversity that's shown up in their financials. In the past, they've always been able to say, you know what, as much as you can say bad about us, look at our numbers.
Yep.
We're always making more money. We're always selling more devices. Everything is going up, so stop bugging us. But it hasn't been the first time they've had adversity. It hasn't been the first time they've faced failure. And then when they've tried new device form factors, they've had some success. The Pearl was an amazing success for them, a very, very successful device, which is no longer. It's a form factor that isn't as popular anymore. But at the time, it was a great innovative form factor that still maintained something that everybody liked about the BlackBerry, but opened it up to a new category of people. I love the Pearl. I hate the QWERTY keyboard. It's just too big for me to hold a device like that, but I love the Pearl. I used that Pearl until literally it was breaking up in my hands. I replaced the back and the battery and everything. So they've had successes there, but they've had other devices like the Storm, which, whether they'll admit it or not, was an abysmal failure. It was rushed to market. People will admit within RIM that it was rushed to market. It wasn't on market long before they had to do a Storm 2 because everybody was saying this is such a poor device. I need to have an upgrade to this device. So they have had devices like that have failed, and they have made attempts to do things with their devices and their technology and their platform that they thought were going to help them ride this wave out, ride not just the growth of the industry, but grow as fast or faster than the industry to keep their dominant market position and protect their market share. And the fact that the market has been growing so fast has allowed them to hide behind their numbers.
Right.
It's allowed them to be conservative. RIM came up through the enterprise side, which is a conservative business. Enterprises don't like, I hate to say innovation, but the reality is they don't. They like solid, tested products that are non-risky.
Yep.
And RIM came up through that side, produced great, solid products, didn't make massive changes to them to make sure that enterprises were comfortable with the evolution of their devices. But in order to protect that side of their business, they weren't able to take risks. They didn't say, you know what, let's go back to the drawing board and build the next device that's going to be out 3 years from now, and don't worry about our previous customers. You know what, I don't care if it's for enterprises. I care about where the market is going to be 3 years from now. Let's work on that device. But every time they did that, and they have had long development cycles for their device, it started off with, here's the things we can't change. It needs to be accepted in the enterprise. And here's all the things that goes with that. And so their success in what their niche was at the time really blinded them to what the future was going to be in the growth of the market. And that niche of enterprise, that need for security, that fear everybody had about wireless devices is something that was a case of a new technology, something new. But as people got more comfortable with mobile devices, security just wasn't that important anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is, but it's just that the emphasis that they put on security, I always looked at RIM as a security platform, more so than anything else, right? The reason that they sold into the enterprise and they're trusted by the White House and every bank in the world is because of the security story. And it was a great approach because they knew who was going to buy from them to begin with. And I think what adjusted there is when you get into a volume game and you're selling curves you're giving them away or selling them for $50, it's going to have a massive impact. And you're competing against it comes down to a retail outlet where it's like a pimply guy talking to somebody else who's saying trying to decide between a BlackBerry and an Android. It's whether or not you've done a good enough job training that person to sell that BlackBerry. And quite often, I think they found this out. They did some silent shoppers, and they found out that, listen, they're not. They're recommending Android, not BlackBerry, and that's all of these things have issues now. Or all these lead this to it, and execution is a big thing, and not having released a device it will be a year between smartphone releases, and I know Apple gets away with that somehow, but for RIM, they really are dependent on a consistent release schedule to get these devices out. So they missed their device projection, a lowered projection by 300,000 devices. So here's what I think. The playbook was a mistake. Like the playbook hardware, awesome, right? Everything about that is great. The OS, what they did with it, the fact that they bought QNX, the fact that they bought TAT, the fact that they used Technician to design the UI, all that stuff, great. I mean, I can't argue that they have to be in there. they fucked up on this device. No email, no calendar. It wasn't ready. It wasn't fully baked. And I think that the fact that they put so much work and effort to getting this thing out and trying to compete in a time when the iPad is just clearly dominant. There isn't going to be a competitor for the iPad this year, right? Let the iPad craze, dissipate a little bit. Let the demand, because I don't even know if there's an industry yet in the tablet market. Nobody does because Apple owns it. You let it dissipate a little bit. But the fact that they put all their eggs in that device, I think that if they had released a smartphone instead of a tablet during that period, they would have hit those numbers. They would have hit their revenue numbers. They would have hit their sales numbers. But they got blinded. They were chasing this goddamn squirrel like RIM does, which is like, oh, they have one? Well, we have to have an app store. Well, they have one? Well, we have to have a tablet. You're not Apple. Stop trying to be like Apple. Stop trying to follow them. And that's the biggest challenge here, is that they were dominant because they innovated. The moment they stopped innovating and started following, they're doomed for failure. And this playbook, for all its great hardware and capabilities, man, they screwed up the marketing. They told everybody that it was the first enterprise-grade device and that they put it on the TV showing videos and video games, right? That's a disconnect. That's terrible. And then they sacrificed their entire quarter's numbers to get this thing out. And no devices until September. And then on OS 7, this is like a company that has no planning capabilities. And it comes down to leadership. And that's why I say, Jim, Mike, good on you. Take your billions. Be the chairman. Be the ex-CEOs of this. And get somebody in there, one leader, who is a benevolent dictator that can fix this. Because you guys, not capable right now.
Well, I'm glad you said that and feel that way, because I somewhat agree with that, but for about 80%, I completely disagree.
Nice.
I think
could
that
see you
saying that they shouldn't be Apple. I think that's not the way they should think. They should be thinking that you're right that they were following.
Yes.
But the problem was not that they were following, and the problem was not that they sacrificed a quarter of revenue. They should have sacrificed that quarter of revenue 3 years ago.
Right. Okay.
It's like they should be sacrificing a quarter. They should be coming out and saying, you know what? In 2011, our revenue is going to be half of what it was. And you know what? We don't care, because we're not worried about 2011. We're worried about 2012, 2013, 2016, and being a leading company. And to do that, our entire company has to shift and change. The playbook is not the problem. The playbook is a technology platform to prove out some technology development internally. It's a way to get QNX on a platform it could get on faster than getting on a smartphone directly.
Yeah, but wait a second. I mean, so the challenge there is that they bought QNX to satisfy the tablet hole.
No, I don't think so.
You don't? You think that they were looking at it before?
They bought QNX to satisfy the fact that they needed a new platform for whether it's tablets or smartphones. They couldn't go forward with BlackBerry OS. They decided that, you know what, this is a platform in which it is going to come to the end of its life. We're going to have to rebuild a new thing from scratch. We can either try and do it ourselves, or what we can do is buy the company that out there is already trusted with the same things that we are already trusted with.
Right.
We'll go buy QNX because we don't have to sell our new platform to enterprises. When we say it's QNX, it's sold. Now what we have to do is build devices, services, and software around that QNX operating system that make it, best in breed. And there's where I think RIM, as you say, they saw Apple had this app store, so they built an app store. But you know what? No, they didn't. They tried to do as little as they could to build an app store. Yes, they got one to market quickly. Yes, they put a bunch of people on it. But what they should have done was said, you know what? Apple's going in the right direction. We're going to build the entire iTunes app store, everything.
The ecosystem.
The whole thing.
Yep.
Not just try and do a little bit of it. If they have a tablet, we need a tablet. Yeah, you're right. You do need a tablet. And this is fine. You know what? I don't care if your first tablet is a home run or not. I care that you are setting yourselves up as an ecosystem for success moving forward.
But can you tell me that they are with what they've got right now? They've got a bunch of disparate devices that don't communicate, don't connect, and there is no central hub, right?
But that was going to be the case whenever you change platforms. Yeah. That happens. You know what? You can't change your whole technology platform in a correct way and say, you know what, there isn't going to be a period of disconnect.
No, you're right. You're right.
That's why they should have come out and said 2011. They said it's a transition year. What they didn't say was all of our numbers will be down in 2011. Yep. They should have said right at the beginning, we are doing a transition to a new platform. We have a couple new devices coming in 2011 using an evolutionary step-on-a-roll platform because it's still a good platform. It still meets the needs of the users who these devices are targeted for. In 2012, we're going to have a fresh set of devices, fresh set of hardware, running this brand new OS, which will be tested for a year already. It's been in development. Yep. It's been on the tablet, this tablet system. You know it works. In 2012, we are coming out with a full suite of devices, with a full platform for audio, for video, for applications, for services, for everything on this platform here. It is going to make iTunes look like it was built 10 years ago, because it was. And that's what RIM should say. And say, you know what, in 2011, that's going to cost us a few $1 billion. Not a couple $100 million. It's going to cost us billions of dollars. That's what Microsoft did. Microsoft said, you know what, we have to do a technology change in our platform. Screw Windows Mobile.
Yep.
They basically stopped supporting it 5 years ago. As much as they won't say that, effectively, they haven't done anything on that platform in so long. They cost themselves market share. They were in the 10% plus range in market share. Yep. They dropped down to 2%. But I don't talk to anybody who uses a Windows Mobile device or a developer who uses Windows Mobile platform and says they did not do a great job on this. Yep. And it's a good thing that the preview releases they had a year in weren't the ones that were released. They decided to go back to scratch because they put it out there, they got developer feedback and said, you know what, I don't care. We are going to win this war, and it's not going to be won in the next 2 years. It's going to be won in the next 5 and 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, and it took 2 years, right? 2 years to go out and build Windows Phone 7. And by all accounts, the influence is great. There's no winner yet. But the lessons that they learned in Windows Phone 7 are now translating into Windows 8 desktop, right? Because they see where this market's going. Mobile is going to be a bigger influence than anybody really recognizes, and Microsoft gets that. I mean, the thing with RIM is that they went away from their old tenant. They went away from that research piece, and I think I've mentioned this before when I say that they should take their 20 smartest people or hire the 20 smartest people they can. And I said, I wrote an article this morning about it. Put them in Mars 500, which is the place in the tundra. It's like a Mars simulation. Leave them, isolate them from outside experiences and influence, and let them come up with the next product that people are going to be using in 2014 and 2015, because that's where this is going to be won. I totally agree. But about the OS, if you buy QNX, you have a year. At the same time you're building that tablet, you should be building the iTunes equivalent. You should be doing this at the same time. You cannot build linearly, right? And that's the big thing, is that if they had a semblance of that, they don't. Like, you can't build one device at a time, right? Or if you are, like, HTC builds 30 of them, right? Like that's how you do this. So linear development is going to kill this company because it can't get things out fast enough. And I think that the biggest challenge, and I like your opinion on this, is that this is the first real public adversity that this company has been challenged with. What do you think happens to those hotshot, smart developers, software engineers that are in there? Do you think they stick around? Do they get nervous? I mean, are they going to start to lose those people that they need? Because at some point, layoffs, whatever they may be, and uncertainty, although there's no way that this company is going out of business. Let's be realistic. I read some ridiculous articles today about saying that that's the end of RIM. It's not. That's great reporting. But ultimately, I worry about those hotshot engineers that RIM definitely needs to attract and keep. And I don't know. You think that they stick around, or?
Well, I think RIM has already lost some very good people.
Yeah.
Some very good people that I know well, who left RIM for various reasons. Usually, it was due to the clash within the company. Yeah. No, it was the clash within the company between the technical side and the marketing product management side.
Yeah.
And RIM has taken some steps last year to try and resolve those issues. But the way the whole company was built up is it was basically two companies, a technical company and a marketing and sales company, which is why they have co-CEOs. And there were many communications difficulties between those two divisions within the company.
Yep.
And they have taken some steps to try and merge those back together again to improve the communications through there, sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, which has cost some people to ask to move and leave from different divisions. But I don't think that retaining 100% of your smart people is the concern that RIM has. The concern is to build an environment within the company and communicate within the company. Whether they communicate it externally or not is a PR issue. But they need to communicate internally within the company about what their plan is, what their technology future is going to be, what they want the smart people to be working on, and show that that's happening. So losing some smart people, if you are a good large technology company, you'll train people on your technology, and they'll start companies supporting your company. So some of the people I know that left RIM, the companies they started are BlackBerry shops. They're RIM shops. They are supporting the BlackBerry ecosystem. So that's not a huge negative for RIM to lose a smart person who goes and starts to build a company on top of BlackBerry software and infrastructure. The problem is when you lose smart people who lose faith in where BlackBerry is going, and so they go and learn other technology platforms and start supporting those. And that's why communication within RIM is really important, not just people that stay, but so the people that leave go, you know what, I know the PR is bad, but in my head, I know exactly where RIM's going, and I believe in it, whether or not the analysts believe in it, so I'm going to start a company based on that technology.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of the big things, the big knocks is their ecosystem, and we talked a little bit about this, is that they need to attract the developers that are going to create the applications that are going to be sold or going to be showcased in App World. And right now, I've spoken to 270 entrepreneurs in the mobile space, and to a T, maybe there's a few of them that are BlackBerry first, but to a T, nobody's developing for the BlackBerry, and that's one of the biggest challenges that they got to attack that, because nobody knows what platform to build for, right? OS 6, OS 7, QNX, Playbook, Flash, Android. It's like we talked about this, that it's so great to be all inclusive, but right now it's I think it's paralyzing people.
I talk to potential clients every day at BitHedge and Ascension. I talk to them. We're trying to sell them on our services to develop software for them ultimately, but they always come in and say, okay, I have an iPhone app and I think I want to get on the Android as well, and they don't even talk about BlackBerry. And so I ask, so what about BlackBerry? And some of them say, we're just not interested at all about that. And some of them say, well, if it's successful, then we'll look at supporting BlackBerry. And you get the ones that come in often through leads that RIM has sent my way for people that have a customer base they want to sell to that they know all has BlackBerries, and so that's the target platform for them. And usually that's the only reason people are mentioning BlackBerry is if they know that their particular customer base has a whole bunch of BlackBerries, and that's one of the requirements is that they support BlackBerry for those devices. But those applications are not the 2 million download style of applications. Those are the ones that you can build a solid company off of by running software and services for supporting field service agents or banking or IT or whatever that you can make good money off of, but you're not going to get millions of downloads of that software.
Well, I think we should summarize this. One of the biggest things that we're hearing out there in the marketplace is that that RIM is dead, that this is kind of the beginning of the end of this company, and I don't believe that. I know you don't believe that, and I don't think that everybody else out there believes that. I think there's just a select few, like Walt Mossberg thinks that RIM is dead, but that guy hates everybody but Apple, so it doesn't matter. But one of the things to leave here is that this is a natural evolution inside of a company. What we should be watching for going forward from this day and from these results is how the leadership handles this. You said it so well. They don't communicate effectively with outside world. I mean, we've seen some ridiculous activity from the co-CEOs over the last little while, and I don't know that they communicated effectively internally. You have to get everybody on the same page. It's hard when you're such a big company, but they're growing up. They're moving out of their adolescence. It's time to be adults. And one of the things that they just have to continuously do is just be open and honest about how this company's doing. But right now, what's under what's under scrutiny from my perspective is the leadership. I just think that it's time for them. It's just time for them to take their billions and go and do something else, and bring somebody in there who is a leader.
A lot of VC firms, when you're talking to them and they're looking at companies that are trying to get out of the small growth stage and they've had success and now they're growing into big companies, you hear very frequently it's how quickly can we get rid of the founders? And there's a reason for that. It's not because the founders aren't smart people. It's not because they didn't put the company on a good path. It's because most people that are starting companies are not built around managing 1,000 people. They're built around an idea. They're built around a goal. And it's hard to keep perspective on what your company can actually be when you started with a vision that's sometimes narrow but sometimes specific, and hard to get passionate people off of a great vision. And RIM has successfully managed to be run by the founders for
Ever.
much, much longer than many, many companies are.
Yep.
There's very few companies that you can say are growing to 17,000 employees and are still run by the same founders that were there.
Yeah.
So I think RIM has done a great job of managing that growth and managing that vision. But as you say, sometimes it requires somebody else to come in that has perspective from the outside about where RIM could go and take the company in a new direction.
Yep. Well, all the best to these guys. We love them. They're a huge employer in our city. I made my living off of those guys for 7 years in their ecosystem, and competition is great. But this is the real test, and I can't wait to see what happens, because this is the days of our lives when it comes to mobile. RIM is a very important part of that, and the people who are counting them out, I can't even begin to understand why. Even selling 13 million devices in a down quarter, it's pretty astounding, right? Like at one point, do you remember like when they crossed 8 million? Like when they crossed 10 million devices total?
Yeah.
So I mean, the market's big enough for more than one leader, and 12% of a market this size, that's a big company. Like, let's not forget that, all right? And you're going to have 5 companies eventually at 12%. That's just what it's going to be. And that doesn't equal 100, I know, but it's late. My math is terrible. But you know what, Jeff? You know what? Maybe RIM should start looking at Pontiflex. Because these guys, maybe they could have helped them, bridge that $250 million that they were short on with their revenue numbers. We love having them as a sponsor. I love having these guys as a sponsor because it brings tremendous value to app makers, because we certainly want you guys to be able to develop your apps, build your apps, and then make some money, and then build another version of it. And not everybody can be Angry Birds. So how do you do it? You use something like Pontiflex App Leads, which are sign-up ads. They're non-invasive. When you put an ad into your application, it doesn't take you outside of the app. It actually allows you to interact with it completely inside of your app, and it's pretty tailored to exactly what the content is you want to display inside of your app. But the best part of all of this is that I interviewed a company called TuneMe, and these guys were doing nothing with all the other ad networks, and then they installed Pontiflex App Leads, and they were doing at points 10 to 20 times the revenue that they were doing with a small volume comparatively of downloads than they were doing with the other ads. And there have been some partners that have done 100 times the other ad networks in terms of revenue. So these guys are unbelievable. Go check them out. www.appleads.com. We love having them as sponsors. You guys go out and check them out and start making some money out of this, and maybe you can make up the gap between where you are and where RIM should have been, the $250 million. Pontiflex App Leads. Thanks for sponsoring us, guys. We really appreciate it. It's a good way to transition out of that story and into another one. I think we probably could have spent the whole show on RIM. One of the biggest challenges that a lot of the developers are finding these days, with the 600,000 plus apps and all these different ecosystems, starting from iTunes to App World to Android Marketplace, and then even into Amazon's Marketplace, the Ovi store from Nokia, is being found. So I don't know why we didn't think of this before. It just seems like a logical place for these guys to play. Yahoo! Remember those guys? They're still around. Yahoo says, hey, listen, we want to curate apps, and we want to help you find apps, and we want to build a search engine around apps. And for those who are too young to remember where Yahoo actually started, Yahoo started as a directory of links. You had to submit your link to Yahoo's search engine, and it was a curated list. Directories, subdirectories, just like you would on your PC. And that's where Yahoo started in the mid-90s. I don't know why it took them so long to think of this. Jeff, you have
Yeah, I think that the reason it's taken them a while is the fact that, there hasn't been a lot of app stores around, and it's been a fairly closed ecosystem on the one that gets the most press, which is Apple.
Right.
And the revenue that you generate off of just direct referrals is generally pretty low. It's like a 5% cut that you get. assuming that the person makes a purchase for the app and it's not one of the top games, which is all our premium products, in which your referral code expires before the person makes a purchase. So
Yep.
it's tough to make a lot of revenue that way. So the question is, how are you going to monetize your application discovery portal? And that's what a lot of these companies are finding is a challenge, which is that the volume you have to do to just make referral revenue is really, really high. OpenFaint started off, that's how they made money. OpenFaint in the beginning was that when you got promoted in OpenFaint and you clicked on the link, it was a referral link. And so when you made the purchase, OpenFaint got 5%. Then they started getting a little smarter and they did deals behind the scenes with application companies so that to get featured, you had to give them your average sales over the 10-day period prior to your feature. And then you took the average sales while you were featured and you paid them a percentage of the delta in sales, which was a much better deal for OpenFaint than doing just 5% on referrals.
Right.
Even though I'm sure their links were still collecting their 5% for that as well. But anyways,
of course, yes.
The point is they found a way to monetize that and build their company into something that was big enough to get bought for $100 million by Gree here in Hong Kong, I think, actually. And so that's what these companies like Chomp and Yahoo are going to have to figure out is, they can build these stores, and I'm sure lots of people have thought of it, well, I can just build a portal, but okay, then what? Now I've got a portal, but what are people coming here for, and how am I making money off of people coming here?
Yeah, I mean, Chomp's an interesting play. I mean, they're funded, and it's a a referral engine. So you rate your apps. The way I guess the way that Yahoo is doing this, they've got a web-based version and an app, and the web-based version I'm going to assume is so littered with ads, right? So this is an ad play. But I mean, Yahoo's real strength back in the day was that curation capability, right? Which was really it was a sought after place, and with Yahoo being one of the top visited websites, I think that they can make a play here to add a little bit of value for the newbie smartphone owner, right? And I don't know how important it is. I think it's very important that you take all of Android's marketplaces and put them together. So you're searching. So if something's in Amazon and it's not in the Android marketplace or vice versa, you're getting an aggregate look to be able to find the apps that you want. So I can understand that. But putting like iTunes and all the Android stores together and then Windows Mobile into one kind of big cluster, it doesn't make any sense. I got one device. It runs one operating system. I just need iTunes if I'm an iOS guy, right?
Well, it's what companies like Fandango and Handmark did.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
15
years
ago. Yeah.
No, like even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
When there was Windows Mobile and Palm software and BlackBerry software, and they would have this store where you'd go in and choose your device from a list of hundreds of devices, and God help you if you can figure out which device you've actually got from the names of them that are on there. After click, oh no, it doesn't quite look like that. Anyways, but now they'd have a storefront and they'd say, yeah, we've got 500,000 applications in our store across all of our platforms. And so you pick your device, and we'll show you content for your device's work. Now, they were actually stores, so they were selling the content, but that's basically irrelevant. They were producing a portal in which you can discover content, and that they could market content to customers. And they happen to monetize it via sales rather than via referrals or ads all over it. Or they were monetizing it by people paying them to be featured on their stores as well. So they had different revenue models that way, and not many of those stores exist anymore. And that's not only because a lot of the platforms that they supported, decreased in market share. The Palm market obviously collapsed, and Windows Mobile, Microsoft stopped supporting it, and storefront started getting a little more proprietary. But Android's not proprietary, as Amazon's shown. You can build an Android storefront. There's BlackBerry storefronts, Bplay, still around, still selling lots of content on BlackBerry. So you can do that. The problem is that when a customer opens their box for their device, the first thing they're going to see is what the manufacturer wants them to see. And when the manufacturers are running their own stores, they're doing everything possible to get that user trained to come there to find content.
Absolutely.
So the question is not, okay, there's 100 million BlackBerries out there, or Android devices, or whatever you happen to be targeting, but how many of those customers are actually coming to your store And how many of those customers may see it on your store, but understand that they're supposed to get stuff on App World and they trust it. So then they just go get the content on App World,
Yeah.
right? So the problem is really figuring out how to make money off of these customers if you're not directly selling them content like Amazon is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, certainly with Yahoo, it's a play for more just content. I mean, they're a content company, they're a media company, so this is obviously something else that they can curate into ad sales or ad leads. I would assume. But it just struck me that if this was done 5 years ago, it would have been a better spot for Yahoo. It's a natural piece for Yahoo, at least the old Yahoo. And I think that they're going to run into. I mean, Chomp. I mean, they got 300 million reviews or something like that of these apps. I mean, you start to be able to get a curated list. And then what about something like what Apple has, which is the Genius, right? And a lot of the app stores are going to start to do this naturally. The platforms where it analyzes what you've bought already, because I have a trust in Apple that they've got my credit card number. So they look at what I've bought and they make recommendations based on that. That's a pretty powerful thing.
Was it there a digital retailer that added a feature such as that in their store many years ago and saw massive increases in the sales that they had? They start with an A, they have a Z in their name as well.
Yes.
Genius is Apple's nice, cool name for recommendations. Right?
Yes.
It's, let me see what you bought and let's make some recommendations. Amazon's done that forever. Basically they built their business, went to a whole other platform when they added recommendations in it.
Yep.
So, I think that recommendations are important, and Apple's got that, and BlackBerry will have it in there too. If you like this, buy this one. Any store that doesn't do some form of that is run by someone who just doesn't understand how to sell content through their storefront. So, Bplay added that and saw a big increase in what people were purchasing on. So, it's interesting to do that comparison, but I think, it just comes back to looking at, what is the business around it. You can do it for fun. There's lots of websites that scrape the stores and put some reviews on it and go from there. But, Chomp has money in terms of getting funding, but why would you fund Chomp? Like, what are you going to get out of Chomp as a business that is defensible as either IP or value from an ecosystem? Like, you're not selling the content in there. You're not having a really IP behind it. Are you building an IP based on having some algorithm that's a better recommendation engine than Amazon or somebody? What's the actual business behind putting money into a company like that? And so when Yahoo gets into it, it just kind of shows again, okay, we already have massive search algorithms that have been developed over the course of 15, 20 years, which are probably going to be better than most developed by somebody starting from scratch, or at least we have such a base to build upon that if the competition is trying to do recommendations better than us, we're not worried about that. We're going to jump into it and be an 800-pound gorilla in a recommendation space that doesn't drive direct revenue, enough for a company to make a whole business on it, but maybe enough for Yahoo to say it adds a piece to the overall picture of why you come to Yahoo.
Well, when it comes to, I think that the great thing about something like Chomp, and I interviewed Ben Kieran, who's the CEO, a while back on Untether. So just do a search if you want to. I mean, he's an enigmatic, energetic guy, and he understands the space. Is that it's not so much what the apps. What the apps are, it's what they do. So I mean, he's building an algorithm that allows you to say, listen, I'm interested in calculator or not calculator, like accounting. And give me the applications that are like that. So if you do a literal search on your iOS device, it doesn't have that kind of algorithm in it that says, "Listen, I'm interested in a general concept app, and give me those results." And I think that it's you're gonna have that fight going on right now, which is the curated apps, and I think that curated apps versus search engines, the ones that scrape it, the ones that just pull up reviews from all the app stores. I think that's you can have that fight. But then there's something about something like Chomp where you've got literally, I think there's 300 million reviews, right? And all of a sudden now you start to see some of the stuff rise to the top. The cream is rising to the top. It's about discovery, and I think that there's going to be enough of this, and there's going to be some consolidation. But Chomp, sure, why wouldn't Amazon buy something like Chomp, right?
Why wouldn't they just use the recommendation engine that they've already built over time.
Well, because I mean, say it's not Amazon, but you know what? It could be Amazon. Now, think about what Amazon could do with this. Is that they may have a store. Their recommendations they don't have as many recommendations. Any kind of recommendation, a star, quality, or anything like that, adds to an algorithm that adds to discoverability, that adds to finding the long tail app that you're trying to find, right? And I think that's of interest. And I don't know. I don't know if Chomp could ever get sold, but they've got like Kevin Rose as an advisor. Blue Run's invested in these guys, and Ashton Kutcher's involved, of all people, right? So, like, you've got you just got to start to think about that there's going to be some consolidation, and maybe Yahoo just looks at them and says, "We'll buy you," right? Because we don't know any better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a price, a value for every company that's out there. In the worst case, it's how many users are using Chomp. I want to get that many users looking at my system. Here's my value per user, and I'll give you that. I mean, there's value in getting up a user base because somebody can come in and say, it costs me X to generate an initial user base that big. I will give you X minus one,
Yep.
because that means I'm saving money on generating a user base that big.
Yep.
So I'm not saying there's no value in the stuff that they have. What I think the problem is when you have small companies starting up businesses in this space, that it's interesting to build a recommendations engine for it. And I think that a lot of small companies that are building things like this, and I'm picking on Chomp, not because I think Chomp is a bad product or anything. It happens to be an example of a small company in a space in which you can put together an interesting pitch. You can write a really interesting 2 or 3 page document on why this is cool, why it's missing, and not just for search for products, but for any small idea like that. And you can find somebody that says, you know what, I want to make sure that I'm involved in a bunch of little ones like this because one of these ones is actually going to hit the nail on the head, right? And it's 1 out of 100 or 1,000, but you need to be involved in a bunch of different projects in order to figure out what that one is. So, I think that the reputation of the people involved in these companies is interesting only in so much as the fact that they have access to a few other resources that another company without those partners or without those contacts don't. But ultimately, it's about whether the company itself is generating enough value for somebody who's not on the board or someone who's not already interested to look at it and say, yeah, for my business, this is of value to buy it, to partner with, or whatever. I mean, even like, I don't know, companies like, you can get good ideas like Groupon, in which there's been some great articles recently going through the business case of Groupon from a small business perspective, which have been extremely enlightening into the actual business model of Groupon, assuming that they're legit and they're accurate in how they are. And so you can get an idea like Groupon that sounds really good, but when you explode it up in volume, some of the things that some of the warts get exposed in it. And so do you end up with it when a company like Chomp, when you bring it up in volume, do you basically end up like, okay, now you're not competing with the little guys anymore, in which it's easy. Now you're competing with Amazon. Yeah. No longer are you competing against someone who's trying to figure it out too. You're competing with someone who has already figured it out. And they have process that's worked on hundreds of other product types as well. And you know what? Digital games and digital applications are not that much different than the rest of the products that companies like Walmart or Amazon sells, that they can't bring their experience in doing those over and be successful, whether or not some other little company has a niche product that does something a little bit better. Sometimes the sum of the parts is bigger than the individual parts themselves.
Yeah, so I'm going to guess that you're going to give a thumbs down to Yahoo getting into this game.
No, I mean, there's a difference when you have a large company like Yahoo, which is saying, what Yahoo is doing is saying, we are a place for you to find things.
Yeah,
that's
anything.
What we want people to think about, right? It's a place to find things. And no matter what it is, Yahoo should be saying, you know what, I don't care what you're looking for. We want you to be able to come here and have a good experience finding it. And they are probably looking at what people are searching for on Yahoo and saying, you know what, the percentage of people searching for mobile applications is going up. So let's build something for those people, because we know we've got 1 out of 30 searches going towards mobile applications.
Yeah.
And so the advantage that Yahoo has and Google has by having so much search traffic go through them is they get to see the trends before anybody else. They know what people are looking for before people know what they're looking for. And so they can say, you know what, people are looking for this stuff. And so even if we're not making direct money off of it, what we're doing is saying, you know what, you're having a better search experience here than you are somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a this is a new world. It's only evolved over the last year, and ultimately, if you're an app maker, you should be in all of these places. Discoverability for you is point number one. Generating revenue is point number two. But it leads really well into our last story, if you can believe it already. Our last story. When we talk about the fact that there's these multiple ways to be found, multiple stores to be discovered in, and when I talk to a lot of people, it's one of the big questions that comes up is multiple platforms or single platforms. So do you build for a single platform versus I guess the only way to describe it for me is that do you build single platform deep on features, or do you build on multiple platforms shallow on features and then build up each version? And then what platforms do you build on first? And so with all the sessions that I've done on Untether, there is a trend. I'm spotting some trends here, and this might be surprising to a lot of you out there. People are building for iOS first. I know, shocking.
Wait. Let me write this down. Let me record this.
Oh, don't worry. I'm going to clip this one. We're going to put it out. This is big news.
Okay,
big news.
Good.
iOS first, Android second. I don't care third. Right? That's what it is. And in fact, a lot of people are saying, listen, I'm only building on iOS until I get it absolutely right, and then I'm going to consider what platform. And I haven't decided, but probably Android, and then we're going to see how that goes. And then we're going to decide. So it's a step program. And, I always thought that, listen, the more platforms, the more devices, the more revenue. Right? So you come from the, obviously, big product development background. I mean, I know that Magmic spent a lot of time, obviously, BlackBerry only, forever. And then kind of branched out into multiple platforms. I know there was a little bit of a sidekick diversion, which was a challenge. But
kicked with that one.
Yeah, well, yeah. Where's the sidekick today? Oh, Microsoft, put a bullet in that one, didn't they? Yes. So, what you've got to be seeing this as well, that they're picking a platform. Like you said earlier, that they're coming to you with they know who their customers. It's on a BlackBerry. We're going to go BlackBerry only. That's enterprise. But is there any other insight here?
I mean, what I've seen in the past in terms of being successful in terms of managing your development resources, let me take a step back. The question is not necessarily which platform or how many platforms first. The question is, what is your product, and what are your risks on your product? And if you're building something like an online game, for example, if you're building your backend from scratch and you're a little bit worried about the scalability of your backend, you don't want to launch on 500 million devices on day one. You do want to pick one platform to start with because you're intentionally limiting your brand and handle the growth for that application. But if you're talking about something where maybe the barriers to entry for a competitor, maybe it's unique and the barriers to entry are low, you might want to get that on a bunch of platforms and get your core idea out there so you've got a beachhead everywhere, rather than building on one platform and letting someone else take the platform somewhere else. So right. You might build a cool photo sharing application on iOS, which is fairly easy to duplicate, just has a cool idea with it. So someone else could whip up and make an Android one and start generating an Android market for you. And by the time you've figured out your iOS one correctly, you've lost the Android market because someone else owns it over there. Right. So I think that's an important consideration to make. And then, what your budget is like as well. Budget and skills development in-house is an important consideration. Do you have enough money to support multiple platforms at once? And do you have the development skills either in-house or in the partner you're working with? BitHead has development skills for all those platforms, just as a quick note in there. But anyways, so if you have to decide who you're working with,
did BitHead start advertising or sponsoring us?
Maybe. I'm paid by BitHead.
I'll send a little invoice.
Last week I was at work when we did the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
That's their 1 hour sponsorship there. That's at work. But it's important to look at what you can do as well. So do you need to worry about scale? Do you need to protect your market? And do you have the ability, whether that's funds or development resources, to support a whole bunch of platforms at once, or do you need to focus on one because that's just how big you are?
Well, it's so. I've seen this quite often where a company is very successful on iOS, and I ask the question: I mean, are you going to move to another platform? They say no, 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 no. We're pretty comfortable here, and a lot of them are satisfied with just being on one platform and doing it right, because a lot of them are small companies, right? 2, 3, 4 people, and the idea of managing and maintaining and updating all of these different platforms is daunting. Um, and then I even talked to, I mean, there's a company in New York called Fast Society, and Matthew, who I talked to, Matthew Rosenberg, who's one of the co-founders, said, you know what, our brand is our brand, and that's what we're building. And if it doesn't look like this, or feel like this, or run like this, or function like this, we're not going to go into that platform until it is able to do that. And so if it doesn't downgrade properly, if it doesn't scale properly, they're not going to do it. Even though it seems logical that they should be on all these multiple platforms. So that's great. But scale, I mean, if you want to protect your market, or you want to control scale, protect your market, these are, and ultimately what your customer base is using, it should be the determinants, right?
Yeah, if you're building for an existing customer base
Yeah.
of people, then yes. If you know the demographics of who you're going to appeal to, then yes. If you're building a product that you're scoping it around the demographics of a platform itself, then that's one way to make decisions. So there's lots of people that build iPhone apps that only work on iPhone because that's the demographics that are there, or that build BlackBerry applications that there's no point in bringing them over to iPhone and Android because they're built around the BlackBerry user and what they want to do. And yeah, you'll get similar stuff there, but initially there's no reason to go broader than getting a beachhead on BlackBerry and proving it out there. So that's a consideration to make for sure, where your customers are at, because ultimately, if you're building a product for somebody and there's no customers there, then it doesn't matter what platform you're on.
Exactly, 100%. We've seen a lot of those guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the long tail of those 600,000 apps in App Store, and a lot of them haven't been updated in a year. And you know what happened there? There are no customers for it. One of the things, I mean, a last note on this really is that, I mean, what you're dealing with here when you start to get into the complexity of options, when you decide you want to build in the mobile space, is that it's not just 3 operating system or three platforms. You're talking versioning, right? So iOS is iOS, but it's getting to a point where you cannot support 3GS anymore with some of the applications, and especially with iOS 5 coming out in the fall, the features you want are on that platform. So you're going to get splintered. And then when you talk about Android, you're talking about 4 different 4 different operating systems, 3 different input mechanisms, full keyboard, large screen, small screen, and then you move into RIM and their multiple platforms and multiple input mechanisms, and then tablets. And so you're talking an exponential number of platforms to build here. So I mean, the sound advice is understand who your customer is, what they're using, and build into that and get it right. Get the right strategy down, I think, is the biggest message here. Understand who you're building for and why you're building it for them, and where they are, and then worry about the rest after.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes you can't even emulate. What works on an Android device is never going to look the same on a BlackBerry or an iOS device. So you got to think about that when you're doing your UI and your UX. So multi-platform. Ultimately, it's a tough decision to make. It's one of the other, seemingly small decisions, but it has huge repercussions around for your company. Multi-platform. It was a lot easier when it was just IE and Netscape.
I think if you talk to web developers back in that day, they may disagree.
Yeah, bring them up forward now, and they're like, "Wow, we had it easy." 30% of your time spent on cross-platform issues on the website with two browsers. Can you imagine what it is right now to manage multi-platform? Well, you know what it is. It's certainly not an easy task at hand. So you kind of wish that some of these platforms would disappear. Oh yeah, Nokia's gone. Yeah. Well, Jeff, we've managed to exhaust an hour, and we've only had one argument, which is great. One disagreement, which we always need in this episode number 19. Next week, episode number 20, we'll tackle some severe issues around some of the biggest news stories that are coming out of the mobile space. Even talk about some stuff that didn't happen in the coming week, but stuff that's been burning for us to have a conversation around. Again, 3 stories. We're going to be talking about those 3 stories in depth. And it doesn't have to be, we're not going to be regurgitating news. We're talking about insight, a little bit of our own flavor to what's been going on and the impact that news is going to have on the mobile marketplace. And that's what we do here. Where can we find more information about Jeff Bacon?
Bacononthego.com. Find this podcast there, as well as blog articles that I write there. I'm writing a little bit on our BitHeads blog as well, and I'm linking over to those whenever I write them from bacononthego.com as well. So if you check out Bacon on the Go anytime I write on that blog, I'll put a post to link it over as well. At the Suave Hog on Twitter for many insights, relative and not relative to mobile, but lots of good stuff that goes through there, and those are the two good places to get a hold of me.
Yes, if you want to know about thermal heating, this is the place to go as well. My name, Rob Woodbridge, of course. You can find me, Untether.tv is the best place, or at Rob Woodbridge on Twitter, or robwoodbridge.com. It's all content all the time. There's just so much content coming out of those 3 properties. It's incredible. I can't even believe that there's just one guy doing it. But hit us up with some comments, criticisms, conversation, suggestions for topics at untether@gmail.com, or wherever you see this podcast in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We do appreciate the fact that you come back every week. Next week will be episode number 20. It's going to be a special one. Not as special as 21, because then we're legal in North America. We're going to be drinking some beer. Thank you guys for watching. Bacon, thanks for doing this again. We'll see you next time. Episode 20 coming up next week. Later, guys.
See ya.